Story time about why you shouldn't always trust people on the internet. So a little background information, I was 14 years old and a freshman in high school, and my friend had recently found a boyfriend on this one app where you can make friends online. So I decided to make an account and I posted a few pictures of myself. After about a week of having the app, some guy swiped right on me and I accepted. If I'm being honest, this was literally like Tinder for kids. Anyways, we started talking and his name was Aaron, and we became best friends almost instantly. We had this weird relationship where we would make fun of each other, but it was like in a loving way. Well, eventually after some drama at school happened, my mom went through my phone and deleted the app, and I got grounded for a good 2 to 3 months. Finally, after I was ungrounded, I went and I found Aaron's Instagram account, and we started talking again. And our conversation started to get deeper. The one night I was telling him about people at school were bullying me and stuff, and slut-shaming me even though I had never done anything with anyone. And then this man literally says, oh, well, we should do the nasty. Like, bro, did you not hear anything I just said? And so for his birthday, I snuck out of my house to meet up with him and wish him a happy birthday. And obviously I was hesitant to do anything with him because, yeah, I liked him, but I still knew in the back of my head that this was not morally correct. And, what else? Well, against the law. But we did it, and it was the worst mistake. After this, he just literally used me for hookups. And then his friend got involved, and they started treating me as an object, which really screwed with my mental health. Like, they would text me and say, oh, let's you know what. And if I said no, they would ghost me or mentally, mess with me. After almost a year of this bullshit, I dropped them. And by the way, this guy was 25. Moral of the story, be very aware and trust your gut. If you feel like someone might be trying to take advantage of you, you should probably not speak to them.
I regret getting a double mastectomy because I was brainwashed into believing that I wanted to be a man. When I was 15, my parents finally let me have access to Instagram and social media. It was like a whole new world for me. This is when I discovered the world of transitioning kids. To me, it was strange because I only ever thought of myself as a girl, and there was no way I wanted to be a boy. But after 2 years of consuming social media, comparing myself to other girls, their bodies, came to the conclusion that I must want to be a guy. When I started telling my parents about it, they totally freaked out. So they sent me to this really renowned psychiatrist. This psychiatrist was supposed to help me feel like everything was okay, and that I'm in the body that I should be in. Things took a really dark turn. I was depressed, anxious, so the psychiatrist would ask me questions about why I wanted to be a guy. And in answering all of these questions, I realized that I did. But sometimes I would say, but I'm not sure. And then he would say, why aren't you sure? And after months and months of this, I finally came to the absolute conclusion that I did want to be a guy. That's when he suggested a mastectomy, and that most people who want to transition always get a mastectomy. And he referred me over to a plastic surgeon. And after months of treatment with the psychiatrist, he fully convinced me that I did want to be a guy. And he did the most awful thing. He handed me the number to a plastic surgeon who would do it. Put that number in my pocket, and I decided that I would wait until I was 20. This way I could work as much as I could to save money. And I did. I worked 3 jobs and I put away as much as I could in the bank. My parents begged me every single day with tears in their eyes not to do this. They were even willing to commit me. In one of my sessions with the psychiatrist, he even mentioned that my parents might be narcissists for not wanting me to do this and not wanting me to be fully happy. And even when he said that, I did not agree. Finally, I turned 20 and I have the money. I call the plastic surgeon and I say, hey, this is what I want to do. I go into his office. A week later, I am getting operated on. Thankfully, my parents were still there to support me, but they were devastated. After the surgery, I look down and I see nothing. Completely flat chest. I was devastated. Realized in that moment I made a mistake. I can't believe I did this. I can't believe I let a psychiatrist convince me that this was the right thing for me to do as a teenager. That I waited 3 years to do this. When my parents saw my reaction, they were even more devastated than they were before because they didn't want me to do it. From my hospital bed, I call my psychiatrist. I told him that he brainwashed me into doing this and that he brainwashed me. He hung up the phone and ghosted me. Luckily, my parents sued him. We're still going to court proceedings because of it. I was able to get implants in, which really helped my mental health. And I am so happy I didn't go further with my transition. How did I ever think that I wanted to become a guy? I hadn't even lived a life. I was still a child, and I was manipulated and gaslit. Do you think it's my fault? I hate myself for how much pain I caused my parents. What should I do?
Am I in the wrong for not agreeing to sleep in a bra? I, 22 female, recently went on a small family trip to celebrate my dad's early retirement. A family friend of ours let us borrow their lake house, but sleeping arrangements meant that I had to share a room with my sister, 24 female, and her husband, 30 male, in a room with 2 beds. They're newlyweds who married quickly, so this is his first time going on a trip with us. I really didn't think it was going to be an issue because the whole lake was available to us. We wouldn't be spending much time in the rooms. The first night, there was no problem. My sister pulled me aside right before I went to go get ready for bed and asked me to change what I was sleeping in because her husband was uncomfortable. For context, I am not a flat-chested woman. It's quite literally the most annoying thing about my life, and I'm not sorry that I don't sleep in a bra. That being said, it wasn't like this was sleeping in lingerie. It was just a big t-shirt, but because of how I'm built, you could still tell that I was braless. I've never thought it was a big deal, but her husband is rather conservative in all senses of the word. I politely told my sister no, because the only things that I brought were A, swimsuits, which would be even worse, and B, a tight compression sports bra for beach volleyball, which I don't think is even medically advisable to sleep in, and C, a sweatshirt, which I guess would disguise it more, but it was hot and I didn't want to wear it. She pressed me again and I said no again, pointing out that her husband slept shirtless. I don't actually care, but it seemed hypocritical to me, so I said that if I'm being asked to find a way to cover up more despite wearing a shirt, he should too. She got mad at me and said I was being ridiculous and staring at her husband. God no, I would never, and kept raising a stink and trying to involve the rest of the family, saying it was a simple request and I was trying to tempt her husband. I loudly fired back that this wouldn't be a problem if her husband wasn't staring at my chest, which prompted my parents to have me sleep on the couch in the living room for the rest of the trip. I also made it a point for the rest of the trip to loudly call her husband out if he was looking too long at my chest in my swimsuit, which happened a couple times before he learned his lesson. I didn't think I overreacted. I might have gotten a bit heated, but it was in line with my sister. But my family has kind of blamed me for ruining my dad's celebration by not letting it go, and I can't help but to feel guilty. So,
am I the asshole for excluding my brother from my wedding because of his fun facts? I have an older brother, David, 41. David has boundary issues and was in the learning disabled classes. My parents never let him out of the house. He has a very rough personality, and because he was never allowed to work or do anything, so in his 40s, he doesn't have friends. He still dominates the conversation at every holiday with fun facts and goes off on those and doesn't realize no one is listening. My other siblings and I just really don't like David because my parents let him do whatever and just dominate whatever social settings we are in. My older sister eloped because my mom kept trying to find a place for David at her wedding. I'm getting married to Mel, and my youngest brother Nick is my best man. My sister, who is close to Mel, is in the bridal party. Her husband is one of my best men, and their son is a ring bearer. My wife wants a real wedding and not be forced to elope like my sister did. David has no place. He's not going to be invited because the first thing he did was insult the ring I got Mel with his fun facts about how diamonds are worthless and do not resell well. I should have got her a second-hand engagement ring or a colored stone engagement ring. We then got a history on engagement rings and marriage tradition. We tried shutting him up, but he wouldn't, and my mom said to let the professor talk. Even at 40, she thinks my brother's fun facts are cute. This put a hard no on Mel's stance that my brother can't come to the wedding. If my parents defend him even once, they are not coming. She's not having a wedding like my sister, and it's time for David to be put in his place. My mom called and asked about wedding planning, and I told her she wasn't involved after what happened to my sister's wedding dress shopping. Mom brought David, who told everyone his fun facts about wedding dress history. That's when my sister decided to elope. I told Mom if she wanted to come to the wedding as guests, they can, but David isn't invited. Mom didn't talk to me for a while. I think she started crying because my dad took over the phone call. I told him what upset Mom and said David isn't invited and Mom can't be trusted to be involved in wedding planning without David tagging along. Dad said he doesn't understand why we all hate David, and I told him what is wrong with his fun facts. My dad says, the boy likes to talk and there's no harm in it. I told my dad that's the thing. There is harm in David's fun facts, and now no one wants to be around him. Dad started arguing stuff in defense of David, and I told Dad we are at a stalemate and I guess all three of you won't be coming to the wedding. I'm sorry, but that is how it is. I ended the conversation with my dad, and my mom has been upset, texting like a crazy person to everybody about how we all need to understand David. What I'm doing is mean. Mel feels like this whole thing is why I can't invite David or my parents. I agree. They can't even be trusted to come to my wedding without sneaking David in. I have to give, like, from your parents' side of things, right? I understand that is their baby. That is their child. So they want to do everything in their power to make him feel included. I get that. Trust me, I get that. But at the same time, they have to understand that their love for one child, like overlove, or is that a thing? Overlove? Excessive love for one child is causing pain, hurt, and neglect in your other children. They need to be able to take a step back and realize, like, okay, there are certain situations that I shouldn't put my children in. I feel like as parents, you should know, you shouldn't have your kids have these conversations with you. Like, hey, of course, as a brother, it hurts to say, like, I don't want my brother there. Like, duh. But for the parents to have the reaction that they did, I don't think that's okay. As a parent, you should be like, you know what? These are my child's happy moments in their life. Of course, I would want all of my kids to be a part of that. But if they're asking me not to because you know that child can't handle it if you put in that situation, you have to respect that and not cause this emotional turmoil in there. It's easier said than done. I get that. I know. But the fact that she took him wedding dress shopping, why? That makes absolutely no sense. Why would you do that? And the thing is, like, as parents, is it worth missing your child's wedding because your other child can't go? I don't think that's fair. I think you really should go and be like, you know what? I will deal with David the way I want to deal with him in my own space. But if my other child needs me right now, I should be able to do that too.
Am I overreacting? My husband ate all of my food. So I just had surgery on my stomach and intestines almost 2 weeks ago. Because of the surgery, I have to adhere to a very strict diet until I'm fully healed. If I stray from my diet, it could cause severe complications and possibly lead to death. So for the first 2 weeks after surgery, I can only eat, drink a full liquid diet. The most solid thing that I can eat is pudding. I can't even have soup with any chunks of veg or meat in it, even if they're soft. There's not a lot of variety of foods to choose from, and I'm not having a good time at all. Plus, I'm still having pain from the procedure and some nausea, and I've had to go in for IV fluids and iron twice now. Prior to surgery, I meal prep for myself and for the family so I wouldn't have to worry about it after. I made meals for myself for every stage of the diet and with specific macros and ingredients to meet my needs and comply with my other health problems. For example, I have celiac disease, so everything has to be gluten-free. I also follow a low-sugar, low-carb diet, so everything had to comply with that as well. I made meals for him and our son, meals specifically requested by him. I stocked up on snacks they liked and asked for. We also have a fairly strict budget right now, so I made everything from scratch to save money. About a fourth of everything I made is in the freezer attached to our fridge for convenience sake. The rest is in the deep freeze in the garage. So most of the meals in the house freezer are gone, so I went to the garage to restock. All of the meals I'd made for myself are gone. Just completely emptied out. I'm really upset because I have no energy right now to make more. Living off of liquids and having anemia will do that to a person. My diet is hopefully progressing to soft solids tomorrow, so I was really excited to be able to eat some of the food that I made. I asked him about it and he blamed it on our son first, which I know is BS because the kid hates all of my special food with a passion. There's no way he'd be sneaking my food. So I questioned my husband again. He admitted to it and said he'd been taking my meals to work as his lunch because he was too tired to make his own lunch. He's always made his own lunch up until now. He also said he was bored with the lunches he makes and my food provided variety. I am exhausted. This recovery period is kicking my ass. Before surgery, I ran a mile every day. Now, I barely have enough energy to walk up the stairs. I'm not supposed to lift more than 10 pounds. I'm not supposed to do anything more strenuous than walking. Even taking a shower right now is tiring. The anemia, dehydration, and lack of proper nutrition is making it worse. So when he admitted to taking my food, I just started crying. He hasn't been much help after surgery. My son, 11 years old, has been doing all of the lifting for me and helping me with chores and cooking. When I started crying, he got disgusted and told me that I was overreacting and being a baby. He refuses to make me new meals. He refuses to help me make new meals. He says it's been almost 2 weeks and I should be able to do my own stuff. At this point, I'm seriously considering divorce. I mean, my son and I are already doing everything on our own, and I know my kid won't eat my diet food. Am I overreacting?
Hey, I'm Amelia, and my parents are kinda rich. They gave me a monthly allowance of $2,000, and I always used to buy myself clothes. But one day, while I was on a shopping spree, my whole life turned upside down. I was looking for white pants, but couldn't find any. So I decided to ask one of the staff members for help. I said, "Excuse me," and the staff turned around. Oh my God, she looked exactly like me. I asked her, "Are we related or something?" And she started laughing and said, "Wow, you really look like me." I said, "No, you look like me." We both laughed and made plans to grab coffee later. We met at a Starbucks, and it was the strangest conversation of my life. Her name was Selma, and I immediately felt a strong bond between us, as if we had been best friends our entire life. When we found out we had the same birth date, we knew for sure that we were identical twins. Selma said, "My mom told me I had a twin who died of a lung infection at age 3. I said, "That's weird. My parents told me I was adopted as a baby. Are you adopted?" Selma said, "I don't think so, but we should go ask my mom. Maybe she can help us." We drove to her mom's home, who was living in a trailer. When she opened the door, I could smell she'd had a few drinks already. She said, "Did I eat some mushrooms today, or are there 2 of you?" Selma said, "Her name is Amelia, and I met her at the mall today. We're pretty sure we're identical twins, but maybe you can explain it to us?" Her mom said, "Mary?" I said, "No, my name is Amelia." But her mom said, "No, I named you Mary." Then she gave me a hug, but I didn't like it. I could smell she hadn't taken a shower in days. I said, "Are you my biological mother?" And she said, "Yes, I am, which means you are my daughter." I know I should have felt excited to get to know her, but I really didn't. We sat down together and my biological mom told us what happened. She said her boyfriend had gotten her pregnant when she was 22, and after she gave birth to triplets, he ran away, and because she didn't have enough money to raise 3 kids, she took me to an orphanage and left me on the front door. She further explained that because heating was too expensive for them, my 3rd sister suffered a lung infection and sadly passed away at age 3. In that moment, I realized how lucky I'd been to be adopted by my caring and loving parents. My biological mom seemed troubled, to say it nicely. But I also felt guilty that I'd been so blessed while my triplet sister didn't have the same luck. The following week, I invited her over to my parents' house. She was very impressed and said she had never seen such luxury. We also had a long conversation about our biological mom. Selma told me a few stories about her. Like one time when she pressured Selma to have a baby, she said she really wanted to have a granddaughter, but Selma was only 16. Our biological mother had serious problems, and I felt bad for Selma. That's why I offered her to live with me and my parents. I didn't expect her to say yes, but she said, "Oh my God, I would be so grateful. I just can't take living with our mom anymore. All she does is scream at me." That's when our twin, or triplet life started, and in the beginning, it was so much fun. For a few weeks, we even dated brothers. They weren't twins, but only 1 year apart. We sometimes switched and it was hilarious. But having a triplet sister slowly turned into a nightmare. I went through the phone of my boyfriend, and one of the messages to his brother was, "Yeah, Selma has the prettier face and better body." Reading that message hurt a lot. I knew Selma hadn't done anything wrong, but it was the first time I resented her. And things got worse. When she hung out with my friends, they all treated her like they had known her for years. And they often made us stand right next to each other and said, "Oh, Selma's face is a bit more symmetrical. She's definitely a bit more beautiful." But Selma was also funnier and more talkative than me. When she was around, my friends were always laughing and having a good time. They liked her more than me, and one time my friends watched a movie with her without inviting me. But nothing was worse than my parents. They treated her as if she was their daughter. They thought she was me and I was her. But we are two completely different individuals. I knew Selma wanted to replace me. And I decided I had enough. I told her, "I'm sorry, but I don't want you to live here anymore." She was shocked and said, "What? Why not?" And I said, "I feel like you're stealing my friends, my boyfriend, and even my parents." She said, "What? That's crazy." But I said, "I don't care what you think. I don't want to see you anymore." It was a hard conversation, but afterward, I felt so relieved that she was gone. I mean, she still lives in the same city as me, and I sometimes have nightmares where I marry a guy who then leaves me for my prettier triplet sister. I know it was harsh to throw her out, but just because we share the same DNA doesn't mean I owe her anything. Had she continued to live with my parents, I'm sure they would have given her half their inheritance, and I would have been fine with that if she hadn't tried to steal my whole life. She was a sneaky little rat. I know that because we are so similar to each other. Hey, my name is Jasmine, and more than 2 decades ago, I was born into a very rich and powerful family in Syria. I was an only child, and my parents made sure I had everything I needed. They even got me a new baby tiger every few months, so I could ride on his back through our palace. But I wasn't prepared for what happened next. I was only 10 when my dad ran into my room and said, "Jasmine, my love, you have to flee this palace immediately. There is a hidden tunnel that will bring you outside, and from there you have to go to Uncle Nabil's home. He will take care of you. Just trust me, and we will see each other again soon." I remember being petrified, but I followed my dad's order and went with one of the maids through the tunnel. It was connected to the sewage water system of our city, and we had to climb out of a manhole cover to get out again. When we arrived in front of my Uncle Nabil's home, we saw several policemen in front of it, and then they forcefully brought him outside and put him into their black van. My maid wasn't sure what to do, but she said we could go to her hometown and live with her family for some time. Of course, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to find my parents. So when my maid was distracted for a moment, I took my chance and ran away to find my parents. And because I had grown up in a palace, I was pretty naive and didn't know much about the life outside. Suddenly, I was all alone in a big city. I walked back to my parents' palace, but I could see from afar how it was burning. I felt so hopeless that I just broke down and cried. From one day to the other, I had lost everything. My parents, my home, and now also my maid. The first night sleeping on the streets was the most horrible experience of my life. It was that night when I learned that unless someone protects you, that other people will try to take advantage of you, even if you're only 10 years old. Tired and scared, I went to the shop of an old woman who was selling bread. I asked if I could work for her in exchange for shelter, and luckily, she agreed. She made me work very hard, but at least it made me forget about my problems. But one night, the old woman asked me about my parents, and I told her my family name. At first, she didn't believe that I was the child of one of the richest and most powerful families in our country. But when she realized I was telling the truth, she got angry and said my family had stolen her uncle's land, which led to him becoming poor and homeless. Of course, I was just a little girl and had no idea what she was talking about, but she must have hated my family a lot, because next, she kicked me out of her shop and onto the streets again. Trust me, you don't want to be alone on the streets at night as a 10-year-old girl. I'll spare you the details, but that was the beginning of the worst period in my life. For weeks, I was begging on the streets for food until one day a man approached me and asked for my name. I wasn't sure if I should trust him, but I was so weak and hungry that I just didn't care anymore. So I told him my family name and who I was. I was lucky. He turned out to be an old friend of my dad, who had been searching for me since I disappeared. Later that day, he explained to me what was going on. He said my dad had refused to give half of his money to the new ruler of Syria, and therefore was thrown into prison. He also told me that my parents probably weren't alive anymore. But I was too young to understand what that meant. I still thought my parents were simply playing a game, and soon we would be reunited. But the next week, my dad's friend gave me a fake passport and sent me to the United States of America to start a new life. I was picked up by someone who turned out to be a distant relative of mine, and even though he had never met my dad or mom, he was generous enough to raise me. It was a strange relationship, though. He didn't treat me like a daughter, but rather as a maid who had to clean his apartment and cook for his family in exchange for being allowed to live with him. His daughter was the same age as me and never liked me. For her, I was some kind of parasite, and she always gave me orders telling me to clean up her room or go wash her dishes. But even though she never treated me with respect, I still couldn't hate her. She and her family were the reason I wasn't living on the streets of Syria anymore. And cleaning and cooking for a whole family from age 10 taught me a hard work ethic. So when I went to university, I studied harder than any of my classmates, and after 3 years, I graduated, summa cum laude, from Columbia University. Afterward, I started my own home cleaning company, which today has more than 90 employees. I just kept on working harder and harder, driven by my fear of ending up on the streets again. But even though I achieved a lot of success in my life, I still felt like something was missing. It all changed when I met Jordan at a business event. He was a famous NFL player and extremely confident. When he took me into his arms, I finally felt safe again, just like I did many years ago when I was living with my parents inside our beautiful palace back in our home country. Most of my memories have faded, but I can still remember my loving parents. I miss them a lot. My husband and I got married 2 months ago, and now I'm pregnant. I feel like my family gave me a purpose to my life, because it can't be all about achieving and making money. There must be something that makes the suffering of life worth it. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope that all of you will someday find the right person to share your life with. It was raining like crazy when a guy standing next to me asked, "Can I bring you home?" I thought, what a creepy question. But then I turned around and saw the most handsome guy I'd ever seen. He was holding an umbrella and said, "I also have some candy." I laughed, saying, "Oh, thank you, but I'm living 30 minutes away from here." Perfect. That's just enough time to get to know me. Normally, I would have said no, but this guy's smile was irresistible. While walking, I asked, "Are you a model?" To which he responded, "Oh, people often ask me that, but no, I'm not." We got to my doorstep and he said, "By the way, my name is Oscar. We should hang out again so we can become BFFs. What's your number?" I gave it to him without hesitation, The only problem was that I already had a boyfriend. But Oscar said he only wanted to be friends with me, so technically I wasn't doing anything wrong, and chatting with him was so much fun. When we met up again, he took me to a park. It was crazy. Every girl stared at him as if he was some kind of god. And Oscar wasn't shy. He always smiled back at the girls. I could tell he was a player. When I saw my boyfriend the next day, I told him I was hanging out with another guy friend. He responded, "No problem, I don't mind." You see, my boyfriend has never been very interested in me. So I met up with Oscar again, but this time he tried to kiss me. I said, "I'm sorry, I already have a boyfriend." "What? I didn't expect that. You said you want to be friends with me." He didn't respond and only smirked. The next time we met, he gave me a gift. I opened it and saw a golden necklace with a heart. I asked, "Why did you buy me that?" "Because I want to show how much I love you as a friend." "What do you mean?" Silence. I knew he was trying to win me over, but I gave back the necklace and said, "Stop it. I love my boyfriend and not you. If you try to win me over again, we can't see each other anymore." The next day I met my boyfriend and felt incredibly guilty. I should have told him that Oscar had hit on me, but I decided not to because I didn't want to lose Oscar as a friend. He was so much fun to be with. You see, my boyfriend was the opposite of Oscar. He only played video games and rarely paid me attention. He had even forgotten my last 2 birthdays. But I kept seeing Oscar, and each time he bought a bigger and more expensive gift. However, they were meaningless because his parents were rich, and spending $300 was nothing to him. I said, "Stop it, you can't buy my love," but he didn't listen. I also knew that Oscar was more interested in making love with me than being in love with me. And one day my boyfriend said, "I'd like to meet your friend, Oscar. Let's hang out together." I knew it was a terrible idea, but I still said, "Sure, no problem." We met up at a mall. My boyfriend greeted Oscar. "Hey, nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too. I gotta tell you, you have an amazing girlfriend." "Yeah. I wish she was mine." What?" Oscar turned to me and said, "I would treat you like a queen and kiss your feet every day." "Yeah, I know that's what turns you on." He smiled while I was blushing like a bright red tomato. I knew my boyfriend was mad, so I told him, "Okay, let's just go home." When we got there, he asked me, "Did you ever sleep with him?" "No, I didn't. Normally he isn't like that." "Fine, but I don't want you to see him again." "I won't, I promise." But Oscar came to my house the following day. He said he loved me endlessly and couldn't live without me. I knew he was exaggerating, but it was still cute. I told him to go away, but the damage was done. I couldn't stop thinking about Oscar. I realized I loved him more than my boyfriend. Oscar was so much fun to be with, while my boyfriend was sort of a jerk. He could go from cold to hot in a matter of seconds. One time he told me to order a pizza, but when it arrived, it was margarita instead of a pepperoni, so he screamed at me for 2 hours, telling me I was an idiot. Meanwhile, I was a stupid teenager. I wanted to have fun and go on adventures, not eat pizza and watch my boyfriend play video games. When Oscar came by my house again, he brought a rose with him. That's when I couldn't hold back anymore. I leaned over and was about to kiss him when I said, "Stop, wait 1 minute." I pulled out my phone and wrote to my boyfriend, "Sorry, we're looking for different things. It's over." Then I jumped on Oscar, kissing him for hours until I heard the bell ring. I put my clothes back on and went to the door. It was my ex. His eyes were wet, but for some reason he was fixated on my mouth. He pulled out his phone and took a photo of me. He said, "Did you just make out with someone? You have lipstick all over your face." I responded, "It's over between us. Why don't you get it?" and smashed the door in his face. Then I went back to Oscar. He was such a good lover. He never held back. But when I went to my laptop, I saw a post by my ex. It had a photo of me with lipstick smeared all over my face and said, "I just knocked on my girlfriend's door. Do you think she's cheating on me?" The post had more than 200 likes, and I almost died out of shame. When I got to school the next week, everyone made fun of me. Rightfully so, I guess. But I comforted myself saying, at least I still have Oscar. And indeed, dating him was awesome. Even though I hated how every girl kept staring at him, even when we were holding hands. And when I asked Oscar if we were a couple now, he gave me the worst answer I could think of. He said, "I gotta be honest, I know I've been a jerk for breaking you and your boyfriend apart, but the way you broke up with him via text makes me worry that you're gonna dump me as soon as you find a guy that's better looking than me." That's not true. I broke up with my ex because he was always ignoring me. He was a terrible boyfriend. But Oscar responded, "Hey, I'm just telling you how I feel. After what you did, I will never be able to trust you. I was dumbstruck. Maybe karma was catching up on me. I wasn't sure, but I sure felt like an idiot.